It's my honor and pleasure to be here with Rabbi Sharon Cohen Anisfeld, who previously was serving as the Dean of the Rabbinical School at Hebrew College, and as of recently is now the acting president of Hebrew College, who has already started her role as president. So it's a great honor to have time to talk with you.
It's great to be here.
Thank you. And I think this issue of gender is very present right now. We're entering the holiday of Purim, where there's issues of harassment and abuse. If we just look at the Me Too movement in America, and with your coming to lead this wonderful Center of Jewish Learning, so I'd love to focus a little bit on this issue of gender and leadership. So the first thing I'd love to ask you, as the first woman president of Hebrew College, and really the anomaly of having women presidents, sadly, of rabbinical schools in general, how does that feel significant to you right now?
Thanks. It's a great question.
Yeah.
I think I actually want to start by saying something a little bit autobiographical,
Great.
Which is probably fairly typical for a lot of women rabbis of my generation, not the first generation, but soon after that. And that is to say that while I started thinking about wanting to be a rabbi at a very young age, at an embarrassingly young age, probably when I was about 11 or 12, which was before there were women rabbis. It never occurred to me that was an issue. Somehow, I think it both didn't occur to me that there weren't women rabbis, and it also didn't particularly occur to me that I was a woman, in thinking about my career aspirations, which I credit my parents with, actually, sort of that sense of possibility. And so I went into the rabbinate in general as someone who really thought of gender as fairly incidental to my aspirations and my desire to be a teacher of Judaism and a leader of Jewish community, builder of Jewish community. And it was really over the course of the process of becoming a rabbi and then beginning to work as a rabbi that I came to feel increasingly just how significant gender was, not only in the ways that I move as a leader, but also the ways in which I'm perceived as a leader. So in terms of stepping into this role, I would say that probably, if I really had to narrow it down, probably the thing that is most significant to me personally about being the first woman in this role is that I have been passionate for a long time about simply trying to expand people's vision of what a leader looks like and of what leadership itself looks like. And I think there's something about being in this kind of a role that just does that organically. And I would feel so excited if there were ways in which sort of seeing the way that I work as a leader somehow just open up that space a little bit for people, both for people of all genders, and in particular for young women who might somehow feel like leadership of various kinds is out of reach. And if this helps make it feel a little bit more in reach, that means a lot to me.
Yeah, very powerful. So moving from the personal to the theological for a moment, how might you root your feminism in Torah or in Jewish values at large?
Well, since we're moving into Purim, maybe I'll start with a couple of things that feel connected to that. The first is that I have long felt that the most important line in the Megillah, the most important verse in Megillat Esther, is the moment when Mordechai sends the message to Esther and says, Mi yodea im le'et kazot higat lamachut. Who knows if it wasn't just for this moment that you became queen? And there's something about that, in particular about that mi yodea, about the way he says, who knows, that feels like not a guarantee, but an invitation for her to show up in a way that is terrifying for her, even life-risking. But it's that invitation that somehow sort of elicits from her, it's just the hinge on which the whole story shifts. And in general, I think that value of sort of inviting someone to step up and to show up in the fullness of who they are and what they can do is a very deeply Jewish value and very deeply feminist value. I had an experience actually just a couple summers ago in Yerushalayim at Kehilat Shira Chadasha partnership, the first, I guess, partnership minyan, and I happened to be there on the morning of a bat mitzvah, and as the young woman was called up, literally standing at the Sefer Torah, getting ready to say the blessing before she laned, the whole congregation burst into the song Hashmi'ini, Let Us Hear Your Voice. And I was just so moved by, particularly in that congregation and in that community that was an Orthodox community trying to push the boundaries of halacha, but in any community, to hear the whole community singing to a young woman and a young person of any gender, let us hear your voice. Just felt like such a powerful embodiment. And of course that's connected, it's connected to the fundamental Jewish value of listening. And listening as deeply and carefully and compassionately as we can to all of who someone is.
Right, beautiful, I was influenced by Professor Tamar Ross's book, based on Rav Kook's idea of expanding the palace of Torah.
Yes.
Where at first I was like, okay, Torah is itself feminist. And I was like, actually, no, it's not. It's anachronistic. But there is something to new phenomena that emerge, that we look to the past and we're rooted, but we also are very open to hearing and listening to new phenomena and making that part of Torah. And it feels like Torah was deeply incomplete, I know that might sound heretical, without a feminism that emerges. And I think there'll be a post-feminism that emerges where it's sort of taken for granted, hopefully, at some point. But I think I couldn't think of a more profound way than what you shared around this ability to, this Esther moment and Mordechai moment, and this ability to listen to the voices and fullness of others.
Yeah, and I love the way you're connecting it to the fullness of Torah. There's, my students know there's a teaching of the Vilna Gaon that's very important to me about chavruta, so about why we learn with study partners, and so he connects it to the 48 midot that are listed, the 48 qualities or attributes that are listed in Pirkei Avot as necessary for receiving Torah. And he says the thing is that no one can possibly have all 48. So that's why we have to learn with a chavruta, because they're going to have some midah, some attribute that is going to give them access to an element of Torah that we don't have access to without them. And I think that's part of what you're capturing the same kind of idea, that without all of these voices at the table, there's a deep sense that the fullness of Torah can't be received. Right?
And we see what happens to Torah and to religion at large when it's not relational, and it doesn't cultivate empathy and an ability to listen and to see. So I think my last question for you is, if, or I should probably say when, young women approach you who are hesitant to enter Jewish leadership, the rabbinate or the like, because they feel they'll be undervalued, how might you advise them?
מי יודע אם לעת כזאת הגעת למלכות.
Right.
Who knows if it's
Yeah.
not for just this time.
Yeah.
Look, it is not easy. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
easy. Leadership is actually not easy for anybody,
Right.
right? There are
Right.
all kinds of ways in
Yeah.
which we really make ourselves so vulnerable when we step into leadership, because we're putting our neshama on the line. We're
Yeah.
putting our heart and soul
Yeah.
on the line if we're doing it, if we're being real
Yeah.
about it. And there are certainly ways in which I have been surprised by how willing to sort of flatten me into my gender people have, some
Yeah,
people have
yeah,
been.
right.
I mean, that happens.
Yeah.
I won't go into the horror stories
right.
now, you know.
Yeah.
But you can
We'll talk
feel
about that
that.
later.
Well, we'll talk about that later. But you can feel that when that
Yeah.
happens, when you can sense, or it's very explicit, that somebody is really just seeing you through that lens.
Yeah.
You know, what I would say really truly to young people of any gender, again, struggling with that, and particularly young women who are sort of afraid about that. One thing is, I quote, so I can't remember who wrote this. It's an opening line of an autobiography, and my mother shared it with me, and I kind of carry it with me, which is, fear is the story of my life, but I never let it keep me from doing something that was really important to me. So I just think in terms of life wisdom, fear is absolutely part of the picture, and you just don't want to let it stop you from doing something that you really care about.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I say, would say to young people, and it's been absolutely life-giving and life-saving for me, is עשי לך חברה ועשי לך רבה. In other words, the feminized form of make for yourself a teacher, make for yourself a teacher. Make sure that you have women who can be, as well as men, but women who have been on this path before you and can be supports and models and guides and companions, and make sure you have friends around you. My teachers and my friends, both women and men, are really the people who've sustained me on this path.
Amen, beautiful. So I had the wonderful privilege to be at Hebrew College just last year visiting and able to learn and share a little Torah, and I was very impressed, really. The wonderful faculty and administration and students, and encourage people considering rabbinical school to consider Hebrew College and all the other wonderful programs, those in Newton and greater Boston area and nationally. And we're very fortunate to have you as the next president of Hebrew College. So thank you for taking this time, and wish you much hatzlacha in this continued journey. Thank you so much.